friends and pioneers. It's early Sunday morning, and I'm going to be making crock-pot cinnamon rolls. So they're going to cook about an hour and a half to 2 hours in the crock-pot. Everybody's sleeping, and I'm going to get my dough mixed up. This is flour, a little bit of gluten, dry whole milk, and salt in this measuring cup. And I've got my yeast all proofed and ready to go. So let's get started. So I have 4 tablespoons of butter. I'm going to pour in the bottom of the mixing bowl. And I have not melted it, but I've turned it on. I put it in the microwave for maybe 10-15 seconds just to soften it up. There is still it's going to continue to melt, but it's not all the way heated up and all the way melted. And this is going to be my fat. Now, you can use canola oil. I just choose to use butter. It's cinnamon rolls, so I want the crust to be flaky and buttery. So I've got my yeast all proofed up, and it's got a real good foam on top of it, and I'm going to pour that in on top of the butter. And then to that, I put my salt at the bottom of this, because when salt hits yeast, it kills it. So I always put my salt at the bottom of the mix. Anytime I'm working with yeast, I always put my salt last. So I've added 2 tablespoons of pure cane sugar and a tablespoon of cinnamon to my dough. I like the dough to be cinnamony, so it's just not the filling, it's the combination. So I'm going to pour the flour, milk, salt, cinnamon, sugar, and I've added a little bit of gluten. My family's not gluten intolerant, but that's something that you can decide if you wanted to do or not. I like the cinnamon dough to be really soft and flaky, and that tends to help. So we're going to mix this dough up. And depending on the humidity in your house, I may have to add a little bit of water, a little bit of flour. I'm going to watch the dough here and see what's going to happen. Sometimes it's dry and sometimes it's wet, so we're going to let it mix up a little bit here and see. You could also do this in your bread maker. Let me get a little bit of water. I'm just going to see what's going to happen. As long as it pulls away from that bowl and the dough is really good, then we won't need to add any. This will make about 10 to 12 cinnamon rolls. That dough looks really good. I don't think I'm going to add any water to it. I am going to scrape down my sides, make sure all the dough gets incorporated into that ball. I think the dough is slightly wet, so I'm going to add a little bit of flour. You want your dough to sort of, you know, ball up and not be so entirely wet. You do want a moist dough, and what's happening is this butter, the butter that I used, is really making it, you know, more loose than a regular, you know, bread dough. And I just added a tablespoon of flour. I'm going to work with that and see what happens. You want your dough to be smooth and shiny and a little bit, just a sprinkle more. Okay, we're going to let our dough rise for 10 minutes. I'm going to cover this with plastic and we'll let it rise for 10 minutes and then we'll roll it out. Okay, our dough is all ready to go. So I'm going to put it out here on a floured surface. Flour it. If you don't flour it, it's going to be really sticky. You're going to knead it. And I'm going to roll it into a rectangle. Now, while I've been letting the dough rise in the bowl, I've had my crock pot on high, preheating. So you want to be sure and preheat your crock pot. Just get the best, you know, rectangle that you can. Okay, and then we're going to take some softened butter. This is just real butter, and I'm just going to take it and spread the butter over the dough. And you want to get all the way to the edges, and I'm just doing a light coat. It's not real heavy. I'm just buttering the dough on the rectangle. And your dough is going to try to bounce back on you. That's normal. That means the dough is really active. And then I'm going to sprinkle some, this is organic brown sugar I made myself. If you want to learn how to make brown sugar, you can check out my video logs and you'll find how to make brown sugar. Just sprinkling enough all over. We're not completely covering it, we're just sprinkling it. Try not to get it too much in certain areas because once this heats up with the butter, it's going to make syrup, and you don't want your cinnamon rolls to be really gooey. Well, maybe you do, but I don't like it like that. Okay, and then I'm going to sprinkle some cinnamon over the top of the cinnamon roll. I just completely cover it. And then our last ingredient I'm using is a Tirani caramel. And this is just a coffee house caramel, and I'm just gonna drizzle. Not gonna pour it, I'm just gonna drizzle it over the cinnamon roll. Okay, now we're gonna take our dough and we're gonna start to roll, and I always roll from where I am towards the end, that way. So we're just gonna take it, grab as best we can, and I'm just gonna start to roll. And I'm pulling my dough up as I'm curling it up. And we're just pulling it, we're pressing the cinnamon and sugar all inside that dough, and we're just pulling it as we go all the way. I'm going to pull it forward so I don't get out of the camera. And we're just going to pull until we know that it's, you know, sealed on the bottom. So you've got a pretty long rectangle. Okay, so we're going to get about 10 to 12, so you're going to kind of have to guesstimate how big the cinnamon rolls are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So I got 10 out of that one. Depending on how you roll it, that's how many you get. So we're going to grab the cinnamon roll, and what you want is you want to grab it, and where you see the filling, that's going to be the top of what you set inside the crock pot. So let's go over to the crock pot and get our cinnamon rolls in the crock pot. Okay. And the crock pot is really hot. I've lined it with a crock pot liner, and I've sprayed it so the cinnamon rolls don't stick when we want to pick them up. And I'm just setting them up right next to each other, just like that. And you want them touching. And we're just going to arrange them in the crock pot. And what you're going to see happen is they're going to rise even more, and they're going to mesh more together. Okay, I have all the way around. I can move my crock pot over so you can see. And I've got 2 to go in the middle. Now you could have put these in the oven and done a really quick cinnamon roll, but this is something you do, you set it and forget it. So on top of the cinnamon rolls, I have a little bit of brown sugar left, and I'm just going to sprinkle that on top of the cinnamon roll. It's no more than a tablespoon. I'm just going to sprinkle it. Let that brown sugar really heat up. And I'm going to take a little of this Tirani caramel syrup, and I'm just drizzling on top, just like that. Okay. We're going to leave the crock pot on high, and I'm putting the lid on it, and it's got a pretty tight seal because it's got this liner on it. We're going to let this cook for an hour and a half. I'm going to check it, if not 2 hours. And then you'll have fresh crock pot cinnamon rolls. Now you could have spread on your cinnamon rolls, you could put pumpkin butter, you could put the apples, I forgot the apples. So here's a trick. I have chopped up, for this batch, I'm gonna do chopped apples on top. So this is a Granny Smith apple that's been cut up, and I am just going to sprinkle the apples on top. You could have lined your dough with the apples, but this is a Sunday morning brunch item for us, and so I'm just going to have the apples as sort of a topping or glaze around it. But you could have put them in the inside of the cinnamon roll. And we're going to let those apples cook on top. Okay. All right. Now, hour and a half, come back and check it. Check your bread dough, and then if it's not ready, I'm gonna let it cook 30 minutes more. So when this is all ready to go and come out of the crock pot, we'll be back. Okay, we're gonna do our frosting for the cinnamon rolls. I have sifted 2 cups of powdered sugar and 2 ounces of cream cheese is in the bottom of this. You can't really see it. I'm going to add a teaspoon of vanilla. I'm going to add a teaspoon of the Torriani pumpkin spice. Syrup, teaspoon of that. And a tablespoon of milk. Actually, we'll go ahead and do 2 tablespoons of milk. So we're just gonna mix it together, get our cream cheese. You're gonna want your cream cheese softened. And it's gonna take a minute for everything to mix together. So you just wanna cream you can do this with a hand mixer if you want to. I just do it with a whisk. Because once this cream cheese hits the cinnamon rolls, it's going to, I'm going to add another tablespoon of milk. And this is just organic whole milk. You want to gradually add liquid to powdered sugar because it will come together very quickly. And you want it to be, you know, thick, pretty thick for cinnamon rolls. Because the heat from them will cause the cream cheese frosting to, you know, melt. And you sift the powdered sugar just to get all the, you know, the lumps out of it. I'm just going to make sure that I get all the powdered sugar incorporated. Sometimes it gets stuck in the whisk. Okay, so you can see this is really, really thick frosting. You can thin it out if you want to be able to pour it, but I like to be able to just dollop the okay. Here are our cinnamon rolls. This makes for really easy cleanup. So, as you can see, the cinnamon rolls are browned on the bottom. Get my fork. They're browned on the bottom. And we could have let them cook a little less time. I just wanted to make sure. So, this was a 2-hour cook time. Hour and 30 minutes, hour and 45 minutes. So, we're going to dollop our cream cheese on top. And again, this is going to melt. So I'm just gonna really just try to put it around. As it heats up, it's going to start to drizzle everywhere. This makes a great brunch item, holiday morning item. and it's easy cleanup. You don't have the messy pan of the cinnamon rolls. And your crock pot doesn't heat up your house. And honestly, I'm just dolloping it on here so that it melts through and through. Almost like frosting a cake. And then you'll let it sit for like a minute and a half, and then we'll cut them. Okay. It's really, really creamy. What you can do is try to see where the individual cinnamon roll was, and I'm just going to cut them where we placed them into the crock pot. Just cutting them through, and as I'm cutting, the cream cheese is able to go down inside the dough. Yummy, yummy cinnamon roll goodness. And we can see if I can lift one of these out of here onto a plate. This is as good as a toaster strudel or anything like that. You can see, let's see if I can get it in the camera. You can see cinnamon roll, the bread is risen, it's all fluffy, and it's got lots of apples, caramel, and cinnamon. There you have it. There's your Crock-pot cinnamon rolls. I hope you'll try this recipe. You can find a copy of the recipe on potspansandpioneers.com. Please subscribe, give us a thumbs up, and subscribe to more videos. Everybody have a great day.